to extend that rotation, which means it's going to extend your diploma, which means you're not going to start with your employer when you wanted to, blah, blah, blah. So, not a threat, it's just reality, okay? All right, so we're going to do that, and we're going to have lunch at 11:15-ish. Surprise menu. I don't know what we're going to have, but I'm sure it'll be good. And then Ms. Chrysler from the psychology department is going to talk to you about stress reduction. I know at this point it doesn't seem important. I guarantee you when you get out on clinical rotations, you're feeling it. And it's always good to have the tools to be able to cope with those things. Remember, there are no tears in the operating room, so we need to get you past that phase and so you can adequately act and react in the operating room. Nicole's going to talk about the importance of MRT, the drug screens, and all that fun stuff. And then this afternoon, we're not going to do what it says we're on the agenda with communications. We'll probably do that tomorrow. But what we are going to do is you guys are going to participate with Director Webb and myself in clinical scenarios, what you're going to experience out in the real world, in the cardiac OR. Tomorrow, we'll have a little review in the morning. We'll have a Q&A session. Hopefully, you won't be too overwhelmed with all this stuff, and you'll be able to think about, have things settle in, and you come up with some good questions, and we can discuss those. We were going to go through then, what are we going to do? Professional conduct, expectations. As I said, the clinical situations are going to be this afternoon. We'll have lunch again, and looking at the patient's charts, what's important in the patient's chart. Ms. Wentworth will be here to talk to you about resumes. This is something that you're going to need to start relatively soon. I would say you should have it completed by the end of the year. And, resumes the last several years haven't been a big deal. They're a big deal now. And it's very important, the things that you say or don't say in your resume. And Ms. Wentworth will go through all that stuff for you. And the reason I say it's going to be a big deal is that it's going to be a little more challenging for hiring opportunities. Okay, you all will get jobs, there's no problem with that, but it's going to be a little more difficult. Your resumes are going to be looked at a little more closely. The number of cases you do is going to be looked at a little more closely. And we'll talk later about that too, the importance of that. Okay, any questions so far? All right, let's dig in. Last August, we talked about these things, if you will remember. And what are these things? Well, these are soft skills, okay? Y'all are here because we feel your clinical skills are adequate to go out on clinical rotations. If we didn't feel that way, you wouldn't be here, okay? And that's not why Lily's not here. I don't know why Lily's not here, but traffic or?
I texted her, I haven't gotten a response yet.
Okay, all right. I can't stress enough how important these are. Being on time, work ethic. What do we mean by work ethic? Does that mean having a good mental attitude about my job? Yeah, okay, but it goes beyond that. You know, demonstrating good work ethic, prime example would be helping out in the transition of cases in your room from one to the other. You know, David and I have mopped the floors trying to get things going for the next case. You know, asking your preceptor, what else can I do? I know there aren't any cases scheduled for this afternoon. What do you have on tap for me? What else can I do for you? You know, those are the things that are going to really raise your image up in this clinical site's eyes. That's work ethic. One example. Effort, same thing, you know. You're only out there for 46 weeks or whatever it is, guys. It's a short period of time. Give it all you got. Give it all you got. The more you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it. The easier it's going to be for you to get into your clinical practice and to get paid. Kind of important. Got student loans coming up, right? Body language. I'm sitting behind the arterial pump. I'm perfusion student. This is my preceptor. You know, and I'm doing something and she's saying something to me. It's like, you know, and I'm giving off all these negative signs, and you know, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. One of the things that you're going to have to remember is that all of you are healthcare professionals. You've been in it before. So you're educated about medicine, about nursing, about respiratory therapy, about ECMO. You know that, but about anesthesia. But you gotta be humble, guys. Remember, you're a perfusion student. Can we all say perfusion student?
Perfusion student.
Thank you. You may know something that they don't know. That's common, you know. Quite frankly, if you were a perfusion student, came into my operating room, I'd be intimidated. You know, you guys know more than what I forgot. You know, because we don't always utilize the things that we learn book-wise, but you guys is fresh in your mind because you're studying while you're out on clinical rotations, and you're gonna pass your boards. So all this stuff is fresh. Body language is important. Energy, you may be tired as heck, but you gotta bring that energy level up. You got to, if you're coming in at 2 a.m. in the morning to do a case, an emergency case, you gotta have that energy. You gotta bring your A game in with you. That patient depends on that. They depend on that. They depend on you. I don't care if you just had a fight with your wife. I don't care if you just were intimate with your wife. When that pager goes off, or husband, I'm sorry, ladies. When that pager goes off, boom, you're in the hospital, you're in there with your A game. And those things do happen. Attitude, of course, passion. Again, you guys wouldn't be here if you didn't demonstrate passion for being a perfusionist when in that interview phase. You know, you still have it now, or you wouldn't have gotten through the rigors of this clinical effort, academic effort, I should say. If you didn't have passion, you probably would have walked out on that step exam yesterday, because it was horrible.
You must have seen the grades.
That was a lesson in humility, right? Okay. Being coachable. Again, you guys are all healthcare professionals, been there, done that. You're perfusion students. You gotta be coachable. If your body language, if your attitude, if your energy is not in the frame of mind of learning and learning, self-learning, your preceptor is gonna blow you off. It's like, come on guys, we're not handing this to you, you need to come get it. You need to come get it. Doing the extra, it's huge. It's huge. It'll go a long way. And when your hiring authority calls your rotation site and says, hey, Marina's applying for a job here, how'd she do, at your rotation? Man, she was awesome. She had more energy than our staff put together, great work ethic. She was always there, willing to do something for us, and we loved her. Boom, you got a job. Okay? All right. This is the booklet that I review with your clinical sites when I do a site visit. Most recently was at Huntsville, went through this whole book with Otto and Rachel, or not so much with Rachel because she was doing a case, but with Otto, and so that he kind of understands what all this is about. But the good news is that you all will understand what it's about. So if your preceptors have questions, you'll be able to educate them on whatever it is that they need to know, especially as it relates to core and evaluations and that type of thing. Okay, and I know you all are familiar with core to some degree, but this puts core and the clinical evaluation on a whole new level. So you will receive one of these tomorrow, and take it with you, put it on your pillow when you sleep at night for osmosis, and most of this stuff, guys, but you do need to know it all in entirety, and we're gonna go through that. Transportation is going to be a challenge here, guys, so bear with me when we go through all these documents. Okay, so this is your clinical, wait. Why is that not showing up? I guess I need to close out my PowerPoint.
Austin.
He's been downgraded. It's quiet now.
There we go.
It's quiet.
Okay, so, your patient schedule, you've seen this before, I think. Whatever. I think you all know this date, and at this time, there shouldn't be any issues with this date.
Oh.
Okay. 4 rotations, you'll be back, the end of rotation is on April the 22nd. Please note, there are no breaks, okay? As you were spoiled during this first academic year. We're out on clinical rotations, no breaks except for Christmas break. December the 20th to January the 4th. That's your Christmas. I'm sorry, I don't know why my computer wants to sleep. too much trouble to transfer everything to the desktop, okay. So, as you know, the 14th is on Wednesday. The first day of your rotations are on, every rotation is Wednesday. The last day of your rotation is also on Wednesday of the last week. So you have, in theory, a week to go from one site to the next site, okay?
Hey, Ed, I have a question about that. If we're doing peds, that's not necessarily like a time frame. How does that work? Like, how long do we have to get, like, for me, and Bradley would go to peds first.
24 hours.
Really?
Listen, we want you guys to be safe.
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't want you 100 miles an hour going from Minnesota to Nashville, okay?
Okay.
But, you know, you want to get there as
Right.
expediently as possible and safe as possible.
Okay.
You're right. For those that are doing the Minnesota observations, you know, the time is just. Sorry, when I get a message, text message, it goes into my hearing aids. I can't talk and listen at the same time. Okay, so, you know, the amount of time before you get to 10 cases is gonna vary, depends on the clinical schedule. So it's probably be around 3 weeks. That's what it's been in the past. They're a busy pediatric site. So, does that answer your question?
Especially in the summer, they do a lot of cases. Winter's
Okay.
not so much.
Yeah, get the kids back to school.
So if we got done on like a Thursday or Friday, we could just report on Monday or something like that?
Communicate with
Yeah.
Centennial,
Okay.
with Mike. That's the key, communication.
But if you show up and then like 2 weeks later, Bradley shows up, it's not gonna be a good look.
Luckily, we're not at the same site.
I'm trying to get done as fast as I can. Yeah, be honest with you.
This is gonna be a problem all day, I can tell. Okay, guys, work with what is going on. This is the clinical practicum, and please note that clinical practicum, according to the catalog, is perf 5406 and perf 6106. In those two courses, there are 4 rotations. You know, it's just kind of weird the way it got set up originally, and we haven't been able to figure it out with the registrar how to make that appropriate. But again, in these two, there are 4 rotations. So what this means to you is that you'll have 2 rotations before you get your first grade for 5406. Okay, which isn't a big deal. I mean, you're going to know immediately in your first rotation if things aren't going well. And I'll show you why you'll know that. Okay, so it really is not that big of a deal. The clinical practicum is a pass-fail. We do not do grades, it's too subjective for clinical work. As you may have guessed, the clinical facilitators for this course are Director Webb and myself. Let's look at the objectives. First of all, attend the clinical orientation, which almost all of you have and are. Submitted all clinical case evaluations, both hands-on and case observations. Probably a good idea to talk about that now. You are responsible for submitting every case that you do, every case. You don't pass or fail a case, as you know from simulation. You know, you have an average score that's accumulated for you, and that score is matched against a standard for each clinical criteria. And we'll go through that specifically in a little bit. So if you messed up during a case, take that, whatever happened, as a learning experience. Okay? It's not a failure. It's a chance to learn something, to make your whatever it was you're doing more smoothly, more accurately, so on and so forth. Okay? There's no passing and failing a case. Which translates to the more cases you have, your average scores are going to come up. If you have one case that you messed up maybe, and you didn't score as well as you had maybe a 1 or 2 1s, didn't have that many 3s, if you have more cases when your performance is up there to that 3 level, your average, your mean score is going to be higher, right? If you only have 10, you know, and you have one messed up case, you know, your score is going to be lower. The N, bigger the N, the better you are, right? Successfully met and defined behavioral and clinical standards. Again, soft skills are important. It's the behavioral standards that you may struggle with. I don't think anyone in this room will, but it could happen. And I'll go into a little more detail in terms of how that has happened in the past. Clinical skills, again, you guys have demonstrated that. You're going to improve those clinical skills with experience and learning from all your preceptors. And they're going to teach you a lot of different ways to do the same thing. And you have to accept that. You may, you know, Director Webb, Director Gill may have taught you that that's the way you got to do that. Not so much at the clinical site, because if they do it the way Dr. Gill said not to do it, it's okay. It's okay, and you learn from it. And you know what? You can ask them, hey, you know, I learned that this way potentially has some ramifications, blah, 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 blah. You know, tell me what the thinking is and why you like to do it that way. They love that. They love to be able to tell you what they know. Presented and ensured completion of all clinical case evaluations. This is going to be one of the big challenges for you guys, is making sure that your preceptors finalize your cases. Just because they sign the bottom of it, which is of course they just type in, and all the blanks are filled, they can submit it, but then they receive an email, and until they acknowledge that, it's not confirmed. Okay, this is a little different from what you did in SIM, because in SIM you use the iPads. So it's your responsibility to make sure these cases are finalized, not the preceptors. And quite frankly, at Centennial, this is a huge challenge. Just because they're extremely busy. There are some preceptors that aren't really focused on that. One of them has since left, so that's a good thing. But do bear that in mind. Submit your weekly summaries on time. Weekly summaries should be done by the end of the day or before 6 a.m. on Monday morning. Because usually about 8 to 9 a.m. on Monday morning, I go through your weekly summaries. And if they're not there, there's hell to pay. Seriously, I don't want to chase you guys about completing your weekly summaries. You know, you guys are professionals. write it on your calendars. You know, sometimes I forget Monday mornings to review your summaries, but, you know, that's human nature, we make mistakes. But please, do try and get this done by Monday morning. Yes, John?
How will we know if our preceptors have finalized our cases?
You can go into core and look and see.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can show your, you haven't finalized this, so they know you know.
Okay.
And then they'll get online, and they just gotta go online and click the link.
Weekly summaries can be tedious, I appreciate that. We've tried to streamline it. Nicole worked diligently on trying to make this weekly summary as less cumbersome for you, but providing us with as much information as we can. Because this is not only your case information, surgeon information, blah, 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 but it also talks about the things if you learned. We'll go through this shortly. But it is very important. It helps me understand what's going on with you at your clinical site. And if things are a little askew, either personally or professionally, usually I can tell. Even if you aren't completely verbal about it, outright about it, I can usually tell. I think I may have, well, I had an example of a lady that from Midwestern who something was going on with her weekly summary. And at that time, the weekly summary wasn't as good as the ones you guys have. But nonetheless, something was going on. I could just tell by what she was writing. And so I just kind of let it go for 1 week, and the next week, it was obvious something was going on. Guess what? She was being sexually harassed by the surgeon. She was scared to death to say anything to anybody because she didn't want to fail the rotation. So, you know, this stuff can happen. That's why one of the important things of the weekly summary. Adhere to the handbook, adhere to AMSEC ethics, we'll go through that tomorrow. Acknowledge and met all the tenets of the technical standards document, which, have they seen that? Did they see that originally?
Yes.
Okay,
It's
so,
on the website,
yeah.
on the homepage.
We'll review that again. And also, you guys will need to do an end of rotation evaluation for each rotation that you're in. Even if you're at the same rotation for 2 rotations, at the end of each rotation, you need to do a end of rotation evaluation. Okay, requirements fairly go along with the objectives. Attend and pass to take care of all the assigned activities in the rotation orientation program. Attend the summative evaluation program, which is the end of your rotations. Understand the clinical competency plan, which we'll look at next. Understand that you are under the supervision of a CCP and need to be under that supervision of a CCP at all times. You cannot be doing anything on your own. Now, yeah, there's some gray areas in that. For example, you know, if you're participating in the case but not managing the arterial pump, and you're taking a blood gas sample and putting it in the blood gas machine, even though the CCP may be over there, you're here, you're still under their supervision, okay? So let's not get too carried away with that. But, you know, if preceptor comes in and says, Jerron, I want you to go upstairs and set up a ECMO pump or initiate the patient on ECMO. And John said, sure, I'd love that opportunity. Where's my preceptor? Okay. You're not gonna go up there and put that patient on ECMO without supervision of a CCP. Okay, all right, so first rotation, one of the funky things about first rotations, Jessica, you don't mind if I sit on your desk? One of the funky things about first rotations is that most sites have newbies that have started. And guess what? Those guys get cases because they want to be certified. They want those perfusionists to be certified so they can be on call and relieve the staff of call. One of the reasons. So who's going to get the cases first? Perfusion student or new hire? Right. And that's why many sites will say, I don't want a student this first rotation. Because we've got 2 new hires, they're just not gonna get the cases. But I know how to get on my knees and pray. And that's why Hannah has a first rotation at Baptist in in Memphis. Because originally said, well, we can't take a student because we've got 2 new hires.
One of them is one of our students too, so it's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so some of the nuances of first rotation. Come on, wake up. Hello. Okay, submit your weekly activity summary, complete the end of rotation summary. You will have assignments probably from your clinical sites. And obviously you are responsible for submitting those to them in whatever manner that, that you can. Nicole, could you do me a big favor and replace this battery?
I don't know if I have batteries upstairs.
Oh, okay. Well, if you don't.
You can just go to the
Okay.
pharmacy room and get theirs.
I'll continue.
Do you know where those are?
Acquire it
Yes.
from the.
So we're putting Justin in charge of batteries?
Procurement?
Yes.
What size is that?
It looks like a AAA. Yes.
Don't worry about it. If we can't find one, I'll use my finger.
It's what Bradley would do, he would acquire
That's what
it.
Bradley.
We're going to review their new requirements from the American Board for ECMO and VAD cases, and so we'll go through that shortly. You know that the American Board requires you to have 75 adult cases. Okay, how many cases does Lipscomb Cardiovascular Perfusion Program require?
175, 180?
20?
175 or 180?
175. Yeah. 175 cases. So what does this mean? You're always asking for cases, right? Again, Director Webb and I can't stress the importance of more cases you have, more fundamental knowledge you will gain, more experiences you will have. Every case presents some nuance that you may not have experienced before. And I don't care if you're 5, 10 years into practice, the same thing holds true. Every case is going to present some nuance that you've never experienced before. So you get 175 exponentially of those nuances. Wow, you know, you're going to be very attractive to hiring authority. I can tell you that most Midwestern students have over 200 clinical cases. So you're gonna be competing with those guys. I think MUSC, their cases, their students have a fairly significant number of cases too. Most of the other programs are lower. So immediately you have a leg up. ACP has guidelines and essential for perfusion education programs. If you need to reference that, you know how to get hold of the ACPE. Everyone understands what the ACP is and who they are. I think we talked about that before. ACP is the managing arm of CAHEP. CAHEP is this huge organization that is responsible for educating all kinds of allied healthcare professionals, from phlebotomists to surgical techs to respiratory therapists to whatever. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
I need to take my computer to the IT. I've tried to get it not to fall asleep so quickly, but I haven't been able to figure it out.
Is it just one or is it two?
Just one. Oh, that's right, it's a monitor. So it's not coming. Okay. But at least the little light, I feel better because the little light lights up now.
I had a different clicker you go grab it.
If you don't mind, it makes it a little easier. This is important. Kind of capsulizes what we talked about in objectives and requirements, but this relates to your ultimate grade, which is PRF for the clinical practicum. Complete the orientation program successfully, complete the summative evaluation, submit weekly summaries, case evaluation forms for each case, meet the professional and behavioral requirements for the clinical site. If you have an issue with the clinical site, and these are not usually clinical issues, the behavioral issues, right? And the clinical site says, hey, we're just not connecting here. We feel your performance is blah, blah, blah. We need you to leave the site. You know, Lipscomb has a one and out policy. If the site asks you to leave, you will fail the clinical rotation, the clinical practicum, and be dismissed from the program. Fact of life. If a surgeon, there's some egregious behavior between you and a surgeon, and the surgeon says, I don't want that person in this hospital any longer. Same course of action. You fail the clinical rotation, be dismissed from the program. Really? Okay, let's talk about days off and sick days. First of all, there's no such thing as a day off. Doesn't happen. You know, there's no, you don't acquire, based on the number of hours that you're at the hospital, you don't acquire time off. Doesn't work like that in the clinical setting, right? And especially for students. So there are no days off. If you are sick, obviously, the hospital doesn't want you there. Your performance is going to be less than par. patient may suffer, stay home. If you are sick and you can't attend for that day, you need to notify, first of all, your chief preceptor, whoever was in charge of you for that day, and you need to notify me. Email me. Okay, so that if the, oh, thank you. So that if the, do I know how to operate this? Voila, wait, I saw it. It doesn't work on monitor
Let's see.
either. So if,
Like that, just hit that button.
okay. So if you are sick and you're out for 3 days, you're gonna need to see somebody, okay? Go to the clinic, get checked out, and bring a note from your doctor, okay? If you're out for more than 5 days, then we'll tack that on to your rotation. May not be that rotation, maybe the end rotation, the best way we can work that out could be that you're gonna do those 5 days during the Christmas break. However we can work that out. We're happy to work with you to make sure that things are going in a timely fashion. If you're sick for more than 7 days, you're gonna need to repeat the rotation. Okay, what does that mean to repeat a rotation? Well, you'll still graduate with your class, okay? That's not a problem. Still attend the graduation banquet. You just won't receive your diploma until you meet the requirements of the clinical practicum. Okay, so it's not the end of the world. Not the end of the world. Jessica was in the hospital, worked 16 hours yesterday. So she's now off for 8 hours. Could she communicate that with her preceptor? Hey, I worked 15 hours yesterday. I feel as though I really couldn't participate adequately for cases tomorrow. Can I have the day off? I shouldn't say day off. Can I not go into the hospital tomorrow? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. The ACPE has a standard that if you work in the hospital 16 hours, you're required to have 8 hours off. Do most clinical preceptors understand that? No, they don't. Hey, when I was a young perfusion student, I did 2 cases during the day, and I watched a patient on the balloon at night, did the morning case the following morning. Yeah. They don't understand that. Okay, a little different times. Okay, but everyone does understand that. I mean, truly, if you feel like maybe you've had 2 14-hour days, and it's like your head is just spinning. It's okay. Hey, is it all right if I come in for the second case? I had 2 12-hour days, 14-hour days, whatever it is, and I feel like I need to decompress a little bit. Most of them will understand that, won't hold it against you. Questions about that? Okay. Professional attire? Believe it or not, the whole hospital is watching you when you walk into the hospital. They're seeing you. So present yourself in a professional way. Should wear your lab coats when going into the hospital, if that's permissible, if you have a safe place to put them. I don't know why it wouldn't be permissible. Make sure you have your Midwestern name tags, and you also have a hospital name tag. Most hospitals require both. remember about first impressions. You know, as soon as you walk into that OR, as soon as you walk into that hospital, people are watching you, and 3 to 5 seconds, they got you pegged. So don't mislead them. Okay, I think that's all we're gonna talk about in the clinical practicum. Let's talk about this. You know how the scoring goes. You know, first of all, there are 28 criteria, 8 behavioral, 20 clinical criteria. Okay, each one has a standard associated with it, and the standard varies from rotation to rotation. Obviously, when you get out toward your last rotation, the standards are higher. And quite frankly, I'll show you in a minute the standards, and Director Webb and I raised your standards. Thank you very much. We raised your standards for your rotations. Why do we do that? Because every year we review the data from CORE and from Midwestern as well. We review that data and look to see how that applies to each class. And the senior class kicked ass. They did. And every year the standards have gone up. And a lot of that has to do with the quality of students who are now a part of perfusion programs. You know, it used to be, let's say 10 years ago, that we rarely, at Midwestern, we rarely had anyone that was involved in allied healthcare. Yeah, occasionally we'd have a nurse, we'd have a couple respiratory therapists, lab tech, that was about it. Rest of the folks just came out of undergraduate school with, strong Bachelor of Science, strong basic science degrees, and they became good perfusionists. So you guys have raised the bar. You can take it out on the seniors.
Ed, do you want help? I think I might know how to fix it from turning off.
Please.
I charge by the semester.
Thank you, Wyatt. I appreciate it. If y'all need to take a bladder care break, please go ahead. Remember, guys, you need to work on that. You're gonna be in the operating room.
Before they have to have this.
Yeah.
It is, ever since.
Hit that one, hit the carrot.
Big brother was watching you.
I mean, it was back to I had found them and like
But it's pretty just like, it's a little,
Yeah, it is.
And if there's activities, then
Hey, Wyatt, is it eating a lot of battery?
It's on the battery, it's plugged in, I think.
let me just look for this now.
Yep.
Right there.
I'm gonna go there.
Yeah, sorry.
I think that's power.
I just needed to stay. hate these
You're
chairs.
set to go.
These,
Yeah,
this one would be half as big with that.
Okay, so I asked, do I need to do anything else? You're set to go for May with Emily, make sure you get connected with Emily so
Yeah.
they want to structure.
Or I'll just
your
stand,
schedule. So,
to be honest.
should we message her now?
Does it eat your battery really fast?
You want me to just do it and include you?
It's only a year old, so.
Thank you.
You're
It
welcome.
should be good. Theory?
Did you fix it?
I think so.
Is it noticeably cooler out there?
I can feel it. I have
Okay.
the door open.
I'm gonna submit a ticket to
Yeah, usually
the
I'm,
correct people, it's so gross in here.
usually I'm freezing in this room.
Yeah.
We've gone outside to that
Yeah, we
pavilion.
had class outside last
Was
week.
it nice?
Yeah, it
I
was
mean,
nice.
not last
do what
week
we have
was
to do.
beautiful.
That pavilion is nice.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's very nice. They just need a monitor out there. So
Yeah.
we just, I took our computers and
Yeah.
it's fun. Is that working now?
I'm gonna tell them it's
Yeah, it does,
noticeably.
it was the,
It's noticeably cooler in
the
the
laser
hallway
that I
than
was
it is
interested
The
in.
laser won't work on the TV, just off.
Nice and
Get
funky.
your ASAP.
I also brought you some markers in case you wanna write something. Huh? You mean get rid of all this, eh?
No, that's okay, I'll put it on the back point. So when they're walking out, they can see.
Oh, that too, actually. We can walk to the pharmacy and ice it up.
David, those compacts don't show up? I was waiting on a call or a text, I never got anything.
Yeah.
I actually have an extra cardiotomy in the truck I gotta put up there. Might give it to me the other day.
Yeah, we got them all, so, the guy that delivered them, he helped me transport them up there, so, got the dolly. Couple trips,
How many what?
12.
I think it'd be fun. Oh.
One on the table and a fan, create a swamp cooler.
Did I fix it?
Wish you were getting a new phone.
I am next week.
You're getting a new
Go
phone?
with me.
I told them to ring.
It's not your battery.
And I
All right,
Circulation.
Which one, Gmail?
It's with our, school. What I don't have your Gmail.
I told you.
It does make a difference opening that door. I could kinda already feel the
Well, I
air.
thought you meant like a personal.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
I
the
know.
school one.
I got you.
No, I think this is, well, I don't know, whatever.
Yes, yes.
Oh,
All of it.
It's no Zach's in here.
Fiery red head, warming this place up. Come on, Zach? Yeah.
I feel like.
Luke's gonna have to come out of his beanie sitting beside you.
Warming it up over there.
She's always like that.
So,
It could be.
I had to turn my hat off too, because I'm getting confused.
Yeah, you can do that.
Like, she
How do
has
you think I
jumped out.
feel?
Oh my gosh, when she's on a walk, and she like took about 4
Wyatt, it's working.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
Oh, no.
Wyatt said that'd be about 50,000.
No.
I
mean, if you want.
I wouldn't say no.
It's only quarters to a
She'll be 2 in September.
Here's my bank number, just grab it to me, wire it to me, whatever.
So, yeah, she's grown on us.
No, no.
Just remember your vote.
no, wait, we got
I was not on board.
What you're gonna do.
Not on board.
She hasn't responded. I could try to, I know, I could try to call her.
Better run it.
Call her.
You should just go to our.
See, really?
You talk to the boss.
Arkansas is with you.
Primarily my responsibility to care for her. There's Texarkana, but there's Texarkana.
It's hot in here. It's hot in here.
It's cold on the dang door.
I was wondering why you were so.
Yeah, we use like native.
Got a fresh cut. You make your first impression out of it. Feel that.
You'll find great places in New York.
Really? Pro barbers. Yeah, you guy in Jersey.
Yeah, dude. Look at the shades. She said something about cancer.
My daughter.
Yeah. That's awesome. I'll help you wear it.
Martin's gonna climb on.
Oh, yeah, my dog, he has to, this is how we
Okay, guys, let's talk about clinical and behavioral criteria. And I know y'all have been through this before, but again, in the clinical setting, when you're attached to a human being, when your heart-lung system is attached to a human being, you know, a lot of these things take on a whole different meaning. So, behavioral criteria. This applies for this clinical event, not your entire rotation, not the week, not the month, this clinical event. Because some preceptors don't quite get this, quite frankly. Performs tasks on time, performance is reliable, okay? They ask you to go set up the pump in room 4, and they expect that to happen in a timely manner. For this clinical case, again, actions and interactions are professional, okay? How you respond to your preceptor, how you respond to others in the cardiac suite, how you respond to the person that's taking your trash out for the next case, you know, all these things are recognized, and you obviously want to act and interact with these people in a very professional manner. Interact appropriately with OR personnel, okay? How do you respond to the scrub nurse when she asks for the lines or asks for a cannula or something? You know, it's not, just a minute, I'll get it. You know, that's probably not appropriate. Confident yet knows your own limitations. You know, the whole confidence thing, it really is a fine line, because you guys walk into the op room first day, you're not gonna be confident, right? Barely know where you are. Had a hard time finding the locker room. But nonetheless, you need to put on an air of confidence, not a false air, but an air of confidence. You know, I've got this. You know, I know I'm here to learn. I've got this. Okay. Don't be overconfident. You know, your preceptor asks you to go do something, set up the heart mate, and you never done it before, you only watched it, You know, okay, I got this. Well, maybe you don't. You know, don't be afraid to ask for help. You know, they recognize that you're students, recognize that even though you know more than they do, but they recognize you don't still know everything yet. Okay, don't be afraid to ask for help. It's not a sign of weakness. Takes initiative and is a self-directed learner. Number 5 and number 6 are, you will see in a moment when you look at the standards, are, aside from communication, are the lowest standards, the lowest mean scores that students have achieved. Which should say what to you? Yes, I'm gonna take initiative and I'm gonna be a self-directed learner. I'm gonna make sure I know what that surgeon's doing the night before, so when I walk into that room, I know exactly what his protocol is for aortic valve replacements, what cannulas he uses, if he wants to drift or cool, what cardioplegia he's gonna use for aortic valves. Is it Nintendo? Is it blood 4-to-1? Is it HCK? I'm gonna know that. I'm gonna know about my patient as soon as I can. I'm gonna know what their allergies are. I'm gonna know what their cath lab report said, all those stuff. And we're gonna talk more about that later. Accepts feedback as a learning opportunity. This is a tough one, guys. Think about this. Think about how you're gonna react when perhaps your preceptor is chewing your butt out because, you know, you forgot to turn off your shunts when you're passing the lines up to the table, or whatever it might be. Don't be offended, you know. Whatever they say, think of it as a learning opportunity. I can learn by this, yeah, I screwed up. Sorry, I will learn from this mistake. This is gonna be difficult for you because, again, you all are healthcare professionals. And most of you have been there, done that, and it's hard to take that type of feedback, especially negative feedback.
Or when your clinical instructor is younger than you, right? So you gotta just, you know, accept the feedback, right? Because it's gonna get more. The scrutiny's gonna go up in the clinical environment.
Handle stress and complexities of situations. Again, whatever you have to do, make sure you come into that operating room with a fresh mind. What happened yesterday, good, bad, or indifferent, doesn't matter. Today's a new day, this is a new patient. This patient depends on me. Even if you're not running the pump, it depends on you setting up the pump correctly, right? Depends on you running the blood gas machine correctly so you have the results for this patient. Functions effectively with preceptors. Why not? You're there, you're gonna be there for 12 weeks. Enjoy it. You know, make new friends. This is, as you know, and you've been told many, many, many times, this is a small environment. And, you know, the network that you create while you're out on your clinical rotations, you know, some of you may interface with, you know, 50, 60 different preceptors during your clinical rotations. You know, that's great networking. And if you have, you know, placed with them a very positive image of yourself, you know, that's gonna do nothing but help you. Same thing with anesthesiologists and surgeons. Don't be afraid to befriend them. Most of these guys, especially the younger guys, they want to know you. They want to know you. They're more into teamwork than perhaps the more senior guys, with exceptions. But I think as a vast generalization, some of the older guys are more into I'm the captain of the ship type thing. But younger guys, they want to know you. You know, don't be afraid to befriend them. Or the nurse anesthetist, you know. These guys can be save your ass, you know, while you're on bypass or when you're getting ready to discontinue bypass. They can also hurt you too if they start the protamine when you still have the pump suckers on. I read about this every week. Okay, communication. We're going to go through an exercise this afternoon or tomorrow about communication, and it's not rocket science, guys. It's closed loop communications. There's no place for anyone to meagerly sit behind the pump and because they're intimidated by a surgeon not to communicate appropriately and with the right volume. There's no excuse for it. Your patient depends on it. If the surgeon does not know that you heard what he said or she said, who's back there? Is anyone back there? You know, you gotta communicate and communicate in a way that they can hear you. Yes, you're going to struggle with hearing a lot of the surgeons that you're going to work with, and with time it will come. But focus on that. Focus on what they're saying. Some of them have dialects, right? They're all talking through a mouse and they got their head in a hole. You got to hear them. You got to hear them. You know, all these, understands the physiological status of the patient, identify risk factors, appropriate surgical procedure protocol, appropriate component prime. All these should be a given, and you should know this for every patient that you're going to be involved with and every surgeon that you're doing the case for. In terms of surgical protocols, almost all of your clinical sites will have protocols for each surgeon. It's up to you to learn them. They've got books with protocols on their shelves. You need to learn them. Some, University of Maryland, Centennial, Baptist in Memphis, trying to recall who else. But they have protocols that they will share with you, and I have some of the documentation. So remind me, Hannah, and I'll send that to you if I didn't already.
No, you haven't.
Okay. Centennial has expectations, Mike has a 5-page expectations document. Did he give that to you guys?
Yes.
He did?
Yes.
Okay, everyone has it? Because y'all are going to Centennial, except for Lily. All right, I'll send it out again. You need to know this stuff. You just can't go in there and expect them to allow you to do a case and you're fine by the seat of your pants. Doesn't work. Initiates and maintain cardiopulmonary bypass. You know, you're gonna find 20 different ways that either the surgeon wants you to do it or the preceptor wants you to do it, and they're all good. They're all good. And guess what? You know, with all of this input, then when you're out on your own, you can decide with the surgeon what the best way for you to do it. You know, do I go on with 2 clamps or 1 clamp? What's my occluder setting on my venous line when I go on? You know, am I gonna empty the patient? Does the surgeon want the heart empty? Does he want it folded? Does he want it still beating until he can assess, blah, 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 those types of things. It all varies. How many surgeons do you use here in simulation?
Just to,
Just 2. And their protocols vary from week to week, right? They do it the same way, differently every time.
yeah, we practice a bunch of different techniques.
So it's all about learning. Myocardial protection, again, you know, every surgeon has their own thing. Some will add stuff to their Del Nido, some won't. You know, it's crazy. Wyatt.
Timed out.
It probably timed out. It's been 20 minutes maybe.
It's gonna be negative 30,000.
Oh, there it is.
Just turn it off.
Oh, you can't turn it off? Oh, it's at the door.
One of the other things that often students struggle with is emergency protocols. Understand what the emergency protocols in that hospital are. You know, it's not that difficult. Termination. Again, it's going to vary from surgeon to surgeon, preceptor to preceptor, anesthesiologist to anesthesiologist. Some anesthesiologists want to take control. Some of the surgeons will take control. They may clamp your venous line and not tell you when they think the heart is full enough. You know, you better be aware of that, right? You know, again, a lot of different ways of doing the same thing. But I guess the point is, understand what those ways are for that hospital, that surgeon, that preceptor. This is an interesting one. Director Webb and I just added exhibit surgical awareness with class, not the class before. So we have just 2 classes of data on this, but I've been impressed because one of the things that has been stressed, and I think with all of you going to Centennial, I think it has helped, is understanding what goes on at the table. You know, when you go into a clinical site, that's probably the most important thing you could learn, is what goes on at the table with that surgeon. If you stay one step ahead of them, your chances are you're gonna have a pretty smooth case. You're not gonna get your butt chewed on. You know, if you are reactive and not proactive, you're gonna have some problems. So understand what goes on with the table. Understand the cues that the surgical assistant, you know, obviously cross clamp is a pretty blatant one. You know what's going to happen when she passes the surgeon the cross clamp. But what about the little ones? If he's, you know, if she passes him the micro needle holders, you know, he's going to be repairing a vessel, a bypass graft, or you know, those types of things. So you understand what they're doing. Not all of your operating rooms are going to have cameras. If you're lucky and people stay out of the way of the camera, you'll be able to see what's going on. But that's usually not the case. And when things get hairy, usually then the heads are down further and you can't see squat anyway. So surgical awareness, focus on that. And frankly, if I were you, very shortly after I was at my clinical site, I would ask if I can scrub in. There's something about standing at the front of the table with anesthesia, yeah, that helps. There's something about scrubbing in that really makes you a part of it, and I think you'll learn more, especially if you get to hold the heart, which we've had students do that. Cannulate, one of our students cannulated, put the venous cannula in. Pretty cool. Appropriate aseptic technique practice, be especially aware of that, guys, when you're setting up the heart-lung systems. If you think you've contaminated something, go through the appropriate aseptic measures to decontaminate it, okay? You don't want your patient to get a mediastinal infection because you were sloppy in setting up the heart-lung machine. It's gonna cost the patient $1 million before they get out of the hospital, multiple trips to the OR, debriding the sternum, or whatever infective process is going on. It's ugly. And the mortality is pretty high for that as well. Don't do it. There's a great, I think I played it for the class last year. There's a great video, or used to be. For some reason they've taken it down. Bob Newhart. He's a psychologist, and this lady comes in and seeking help. And the bottom line of it is, and he will ask her why she does this behavior, and she goes on to explain it, and he stops and looks at her and he says, "Stop it!" And she kind of looks like, what just happened? And then again, it happens again, and he same refrain. You have to see it, it's really funny, and I was gonna show it to you, but they took the link down. It was a YouTube video. Okay, post-bypass awareness. Okay, terminated bypass, life is good. Patient's stable, protamine's in, surgeon said things are drying up. Oh man, I can relax. Anesthesia is there, finalizing their stock things for the day. And you're not smiling, Jessica. And surgeon is, he's happy, he's, closing, or he may have left the room, residents in there.
Music goes up, they turn the music up.
Music is turned up, and circulating nurse is busy doing the paperwork, counting needles and whatever stuff they do. And all of a sudden, boom, patient has no pressure. Who's watching this patient? No one is watching the patient. That's your job. That is your job. Make sure the patient is observed during all these other things going on. Because if that happens, if that scenario I just told you happens, they're going to point to you. Why didn't you tell me the pressure was low? Why didn't you tell me the patient was fibrillating? Demonstrates post-bypass awareness. You're responsible for that. Manages post-bypass extracorporeal fluid procedure. Most people use cell washing. Some, if they're smart, will use, I didn't say that, hemoconcentration. Some just bag the crap and run into the patient. I'm not opinionated, am I? Here's my 2 cents on that. I think cell washing is great, and it should be used intraoperatively, but with your extracorporeal fluid, why would you toss away all the clotting factors? Yeah, there's a little extra heparin in there. Okay, we can give 50 milligrams of protamine. Why would you wash away all those clotting factors? See, when you guys are chief perfusionist you know, you can make all this stuff happen. Make sure you're well-read, you have all your research done on it before you present that to the surgeon. Because if you don't, he won't listen to you. Gotta show him the facts. Completes post-procedural activities and cleanup. I don't know why there wouldn't be all threes for this, but you'll see, doesn't always happen. Questions about our criteria? They're not gonna change, they'll always be the same for your rotations anyway. Okay, I would encourage you guys, I know there are a lot of things going on, but I certainly would encourage you to review your case evaluations. Understand, you know, the areas that you can improve. I'll show you what your average scores are at 4 weeks and 8 weeks and 11 weeks. But it's too late then, isn't it? At 8 weeks, if you're not meeting the standards for several of your criteria, it's too late. You'll never recover. So when I send out those summative evaluations, you know, your preceptor gets them, your chief preceptor gets them, Director Webb gets them, I get them, and you get them. So we're all aware of what's going on. And if there are some areas that you might need help, we can develop a game plan for that. And also, you can go to your preceptor and, hey, obviously I've fallen a little short of these standards here. How do you think I can, you know, increase my scores here? It's all about learning. It's not about whether you're gonna pass or fail. It's all about learning. Here's the fun part, guys. Here are the behavioral standards don't change because these are behaviors that have to go on at the clinical site. They don't change. And this is where, if you're gonna be marked down in any criteria area, this is the area that you'll be marked down, and you may or may not meet the standard. That's real clinical life. Yeah, you're going to have some mediocre to low scores on initiation, on termination, on myocardial protection, especially initially. But that's okay because the standards reflect that. These don't. You gotta be there. And as you can see, professionalism interacts appropriately with personnel. There's no room, there's no margin there. It's gotta be a 3, satisfactory. Okay. So you can, the first number is the standard from last year. And then the second number, you can see I've taken it out to 2 digits because in some cases that's how close as it gets. But these are your standards, the ones on the right. And as you can see, there's some huge improvements from last year to you guys. Huge increases in the standards. I'll let you absorb that a little bit. In your final rotation, almost all of these are 2 8s, 2 9s. I mean, what's next after your last rotation? you're gonna be doing patients on your own. Better be up there. Why is this so low? I can understand this one because it's all new. I can understand this one because, again, it's new, different hospital, different protocol for initiation and for termination here. Why communications? There's no excuse for that. Repeating what the surgeon said, cheerleader voices, succinct communications, no extra words. Surgeons don't want to hear that. You start giving them a bunch of gobbledygook, they're gonna turn you off just like that. Or you're gonna get the, you know, the headlight in the forehead, the stare of death. Have you all witnessed that? Okay. Any questions about our criteria, guys? There's a document that's in the booklets that you will have and that your clinical sites have. And by the way, I haven't done it yet, but before you start your clinical rotations, I will refresh core with the revisions that Director Webb and I have made, soon to be doctor, right? Director Webb and I have made in the clinical documents. So it'll be on core, so they have access to it whenever they want to take a look. One of these documents is a further delineation of most of the clinical criteria and behavioral criteria. So if your preceptor says, I'm not sure exactly how to evaluate you with initiation of cardiopulmonary bypass. So you can tell them, you know, if you want to look in here, it's further broken down in terms of what that criteria means. I don't know as if anyone has ever asked a student.
You know, they may ask you to evaluate yourself. How do you, like, what do you do in the lab?
Yeah.
What do you think you did today? You know, because typically you guys all know you're always hard on yourself. So they may get some feedback from you. How do you think it went? And then you'd be like, you sit in the chair and everything goes away and you go, it's a case over, right? So you're gonna have those experiences just like we've had in the lab.
If they ask you, will be available on core. Okay. Again, just breaks down the different criteria into different tenets of that particular criteria. Okay. Can everyone see this? Kind
It's
of.
just really small. I can't see it, it's really small.
You can zoom in.
What this is the Excel spreadsheet that you will get, your preceptor will get, Director Webb gets, obviously I get it. It will have the mean scores for your individual criteria, behavioral and clinical, and next to it is the standard for that score. Okay, so if there's an area that there we go. If there is an area, for example, imagine that, communications. Well, the standard is 2.8 for this rotation, and the average score is 2.5. So it'll be highlighted in yellow if you're not meeting that particular standard for whatever that period of time is. Okay? So, what's your next question? Maybe it should be, what happens if I don't meet 100% of these criteria? So, we're not that cruel, are we? Don't answer. Okay. When Director Webb and I went through all the data and decided what we're going to do for each standard, frankly, our thought process was, we want to increase the standards for you guys. You know, we want you to push yourselves. We want you to achieve at a very high level. Okay, but we don't want to bounce anyone out of the program unnecessarily. If you're gonna bounce, you're gonna bounce yourself out, not because of us. So, we've lowered the percentage of criteria that you need for that particular rotation. Okay, so the first rotation, you only need 61% of the standards, to meet 61% of the standards in order to meet the requirements of that rotation. And you'll progress along the way to the last rotation, which is 75. 75% of the standards you need to meet. Don't think of those percentages as, don't relax, you know, go for 100%. I can tell you that 90% of the senior class got 100%, met 100% of the standards on this last rotation. 100%. And the only reason that one of the students didn't meet 100% was they just transitioned from a pediatric to an adult rotation. And as you all will see in your pediatric, mostly your pediatric hands-on is two different worlds. Kristen's going to find that right off the bat. Working with the executive of the chief executive of the ACPE.
That's right.
He was just promoted to that. Marina, and you're next.
Surgeon there and Sydney, Australia.
But
Small world.
realistically, Brad is extremely knowledgeable pediatric perfusionist, and you guys are going to learn a lot. He's tough. Yeah, he's tough. He has high expectations for you, but that's not to say you can't meet them. He's reasonable, and you'll thoroughly enjoy your rotations there, and you get a lot of peds. Now, depends on how many. Brad likes to educate as many students as he can, so you more than likely there'll be 2 students there, maybe 3. So you got to divide the cases. But you know what, guys? If you set the appropriate objectives for yourself, and actually, I'll show you what you need to do. You can learn a lot from observation. When you're observing, you know, you're not just standing up at the, let's say you're at the front of the table, you're not just standing at the front of the table with your thumb up, you're dumb. I mean, you know, you have to have objectives. I want to learn, today I want to focus on what that circulating nurse does, or what the circulating nurse does, what the scrub nurse does, what the assistant does, blah, blah, blah. You know, have discrete objectives that you want to achieve when you're observing. And I'll show you some of these objectives that the American Board wants you to have. Everyone okay with criteria, with what you're gonna see, what you need. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the PowerPoint. And we'll finish up on the all right, what do I do with this light changer, guys? Whose desk? I usually leave it on someone's desk. Probably my own. Not to state the obvious, but why are we gonna do clinical rotations? Okay? You're gonna get exposed to a lot of different procedures, protocols, techniques, a lot of different equipment. You know, some really cool equipment, some not so much, but still works, and you embrace that. But, you know, you're gonna be exposed to all it. Guys, it's really exciting. Really exciting, especially with some of the newer technology. I wish I was back in the OR. One of my main things is I want to try the new quantum oxygenator that's a closed system and can be utilized also as an open system. You know, I'm back to 1980. I've always used a closed system except for mitral valves. So I had a case where very difficult exposure, surgeons were tugging on the cable cannula. I had a ton of air coming back to the pump. And I really had a hard time dealing with it. So I decided at that time I was going to use open systems for mitral valves. Aside from that, it was all closed. A lot of advantages to closed systems. We've become lazy as perfusionists, and the reason we don't use more closed systems is it's a little more difficult. It's a little more expensive. So, my opinion. When you go out in your clinical rotations, don't say, well, Ed said that the best system is a closed system. Because you know what? You'll probably say, well, we'll see you tomorrow. One of the key things that if you are not already a fan, you will really learn to love is teamwork. The teamwork that goes on in the cardiac OR. You'll never find it like anything like that in any other place, in any other venue that I can think of. Nuclear science, maybe, I don't know, but it's amazing, guys. It's amazing. For those teams that work together well together as a team, it's incredible. And you know who's on the winning side of that is the patient. I think there's a lot to be learned, and I think you will learn a lot. Listen to don't listen to every conversation, but listen to conversations between your cardiac surgeon and the cardiologist, the cardiac surgeon and the anesthesiologist. You know, as they talk about patients or as they talk about your patient. You know, for the most part, the discussion is a very professional way, unless it's contentious. It's a very professional way, and you'll learn a lot from that. You know, go to, if you can, and most centers you can, go to M&M meetings. Not peanut or plain, but morbidity and mortality. And listen to the discussions between you know, radiology, cardiology, anesthesiology, even perfusion. Perfusion oftentimes is invited to these. Go to rounding for your ECMO patients, where every discipline in the hospital that's involved with this patient is talking about this patient. You truly will learn a lot. I think the other important part of communications that we haven't really talked about is speaking your mind. Yes, you are perfusion students, you know, maybe you're on your first rotation. If you see something that is not right, you need to speak your mind. Maybe you embarrass yourself, it's okay. It's okay. But what if that really had a negative ramification for that patient? You have to speak your mind. Is that clear? I can't be more emphatic about that. And we can go back and we could find case reports that for perfusion students where there were negative, you can sit up here. I won't bite.
I can hear you, it's okay.
Where there were case reports where a perfusion student did not speak their mind, or perfusionist, maybe it was usually, it's your new perfusion student perhaps that's not completely familiar with that hospital, didn't speak her mind. Patient died because the surgeon did the wrong procedure on the wrong patient. And you got to do it, even if you're completely off base, and yeah, you get embarrassed. That's a lot better than having a patient some morbidity or mortality from a patient. Got to speak your mind. Controlling your behavior. Again, it's about being humble. Be humble. You're there to learn, guys. You're there to learn. Yeah, you may know it, but you're still there to learn. There's something to learn from every preceptor that you be in contact with. Even if they're buttholes, you know, you can still learn something from them. One of the questions that often comes up, especially in the first rotation, is you'll have perfusionists who aren't certified working with you. Is that okay? Can you be with as long as you're not managing the heart-lung machine, you're not managing the patient on cardiopulmonary bypass, can you be sitting in the second chair with a student who's not certified?
Yeah, if you're not.
Yeah, so what? You'll learn something from them. They're fresh out of school, typically. Yeah. Even though they may have gone to Midwestern, you still might learn something from them. Don't get me wrong, guys, I like to poke fun, but I love Midwestern. It was a great experience for me. They're just classes are too big. So you're managing this patient on cardiopulmonary bypass and the preceptor is not certified. Is that cool? If the hospital says it is, you're okay. If the hospital says it's okay, you can work with this non-certified perfusionist. The only problem is you can't submit that case to the American Board.
Cannot say that.
Okay. But you can still, you know, you'll learn something from those folks.
How many cases are we gonna submit to the American Board? 75, right? And so what's the target? I'm sorry.
know you've done that in the sim lab. But this is a whole new world of multitasking, guys, out there. So get comfortable with it. You can't be distracted from your main purpose that you're doing there because the circulating nurse is asking you about something, because your preceptor is asking you about why you're doing this. I can't tell you the number of times I hear, well, I can't focus when I'm on bypass because the preceptor keeps on asking me questions, you know? So what? So what? You gotta learn to deal with that. You gotta learn to deal with, the multitasking. You're looking at blood gas results while you're trying to go on bypass or, whatever that scenario might be. You gotta understand all that. Gotta be able to task with all those. Yeah. Your rotations can be an endurance test. It's okay. It's kind of like training for a marathon. The marathon is going to be when you go out on your own clinical practice. You're training for it now. And some of you may have sites where, you may only be working 30 hours a week. And that's okay, as long as you're learning, as long as you're doing other things that perhaps enhance that learning experience aside from just managing patients on cardiopulmonary bypass. Maybe you're studying for your certification exams. You should be. One of the things that you're going to learn and you need to learn is, knowing everything that's going on in that room. You're knowing what the circulating nurse is doing. You're knowing that anesthesia is there reading the Wall Street Journal, and you're knowing what the surgeon's doing. You're aware of all these things. Because people in the room are depending upon you to be aware of all these things. So you need to increase your senses, your input in terms of being able to take all that input and understand what's important and what you kind of set aside. As a practicing perfusionist, you're going to have nursing students, you're going to have perfusion students, you're going to have whomever is observing. They want to be there next to the perfusionist, and they're going to be pumping you for questions. You need to do what you need to do with that patient, but still you're being cordial to them. Unless things get hairy and you say, excuse me, we can't talk right now. And that's another thing, guys. As a student, speak your mind. If you're in a situation where perhaps you're terminating bypass, you need to hear the surgeon, music is up loud. Don't be afraid to ask to turn the music down. They'll respect you for that. Don't be afraid to ask them. Music's too loud, I can't hear the surgeon, could you turn it down, please? Obviously, you're going to say that in a professional manner. Gosh, you're going to be making life-saving decisions. Memory, judgment, reasoning, critical thinking, it all comes into play. And you need to put all those in gear. Fortunately, with the preceptor, you have another brain with you, another set of eyes, hands. When you're out on clinical practice, first night you're on call, you're going to get called in for emergency at 2 a.m. in the morning, I guarantee you. You need to put all those things in place. For those that have worked in the operating room, how regularly are things scheduled and done? Doesn't happen, you know, it doesn't happen.
It's a loaded question right there, Professor Evans.
If, you know, if you're a black and white person, has nothing to do with race. And you need, you know, this to happen there, that to happen there, that to, you know, you better leave now, because that's not perfusion. That's not cardiac surgery. You know, things change by the minute. You think you're doing an aortic valve and you're doing an arch, followed by another arch, followed by a heart transplant, and I thought I was gonna have a simple cabbage today. Yeah. You know, I think one of the mind frames that y'all need to get into is, even though, you know, maybe that surgeon is being difficult, you still have to respect them, right? I mean, this guy, this lady, you know, think of all the education they've gone through. Think about their residency, their internship, their fellowship. You know, the years that they've put into this. They know a lot. Maybe they're not quite as good with their hands, but they know a lot. Same thing with anesthesia. You know, nursing's the same way. They go through the same education that you go through. You know, we gotta respect these people. Even though we don't like them, we respect them. I hate to be political, but even though you may hate Donald Trump, you still gotta respect him as the President of the United States. Confidence, know your own limitations. If you guys make a mistake, own it. Own it. Don't try and cover up. That's the worst thing you can do, is cover up. Everyone recognizes that we're all learning, we all make mistakes. I think one of the cultures that we have gotten away from is finger pointing. Although we're not completely away from that, but I think we're well on our way. And, you know, we understand that people make mistakes. We understand that we have to learn from those mistakes. And that is so, so important in the cardiac OR when you're dealing with those life and death situations with that patient. And let's face it, guys, you have the biggest chance of killing that patient of anyone else in that room. Surgeon makes a mistake, they can usually repair it. You pump air, good chance you're not gonna be able to repair it. Better have a hyperbaric chamber close by and know the appropriate protocol for massive air embolism. Oftentimes you're gonna be biting your tongue. You know, try not to make it bleed, but you're gonna be biting your tongue. Recognize that's part of the whole deal. And again, relationships, you know, the relationships that you develop with your preceptors, if you're open to that, will last for a lifetime, and you'll be communicating with them, reaching out to them for your professional career.
Those are where you're gonna get your letters of recommendation for the first job. You're not gonna want one from me, Professor Evans. You're gonna want people that will work with you clinically.
Okay. American Board says that you have to minimally do 75 adult cases. If your pediatric cases are hands-on, 10 of those 75 can be peds. If your pediatric cases are observation, 75 adults, 10 observations. Okay, is that clear? In case I forget, I'm sorry, my pants are falling down. In case I forget, one of the things that you need to do is, yes, all your cases that you submit to CORE will be available to you on CORE. There are a lot of funky things happening in this world these days, and there are a lot of adventurous that think they're super cool computer knowledge-wise and they can hack into systems. It happens, right? It happens. They can hack into United Healthcare, which is the largest healthcare system in the United States. Download your American Board form and fill in your cases as soon after you do the case as possible, or when you get home, and keep track of the number of cases that you do. Okay. If CORE has an issue and you come crying to Director Webb or myself, all I can say is, I'm sorry. Why didn't you use the American Board form as well as a backup? And aside from that, then you got your application for your basic science exam filled out. The only thing you have to do is get it signed by Director Webb and pay your money, of course. So please do that. The form is available on the American Board, just download it. I think I even have one on CORE. I'll put it in your graduation class as well. Here's what the American Board requires, and this is all on the American Board website. Here's what they require for a adult cardiopulmonary bypass case to count. Pre-op patient assessment, equipment selection. We're going to use 1/2-inch tubing, quarter or 3/8 inch tubing. Are we going to use VAVD, no VAVD? What cardioplegia delivery device are we going to use? We're going to use a hemoconcentrator, blah, blah, blah. Circuit preparation, initiation of cardiopulmonary bypass, physiological management of that patient during bypass, and termination. That's what's required for a case to count. Now, is the American Board going to come back and audit Geron and say, dude, you didn't select the cannula for this case, how can you count it? No. There's some gray areas there, guys, but fundamentally this is what you have to do. Pediatric observation requires the following: equipment selection briefing. So you're not necessarily telling the preceptor what it is that they're going to use, but perhaps you're there, they're briefing you on the equipment that they're going to use for this neonate or for newborn or whatever. Observation of the circuit preparation, observation of initiation, observation of physiological management during bypass, observation of termination, post-bypass debriefing, and obviously you must be physically present in the room. You're not standing outside the room watching a monitor or the camera that's in the operating room. That does not count. Okay? You need all those things in order to count that observation case to count. And this is all new, guys. before there was some general statement like you had to have significant participation in that observation, whatever that means. Okay, yeah, Luke.
I can wait till the end, but it's relevant.
It's all right.
With respect to pediatric observation cases and the goal of 10, is it ideal to perhaps see more of those as well on your ped site, or after those 10 met, to go back onto adult type cases and have those be the larger number to get to 175 or higher?
You know, where are you doing your peds? Mount Sinai?
Mount Sinai, New York City.
Okay. What's a good way to put this? Even though you may never do a peds case in your life, the more you understand about pediatrics and the physiology of these kids, and how you manage bypass with them, the better perfusionist you're gonna be. Does that make sense? So I guess what I'm telling you is if you have the opportunity to get more than 10, if you feel as though you need to improve your skills with adults, then maybe that should be your focus.
Okay.
You know, if there are no adult cases that you're assigned to that day and there are peds you can observe, yeah, go for it.
Okay. Thank you.
Usually there aren't those opportunities except in those hospitals that do both adults and peds.
Would you say the same if like you have a similar situation, but it's your first rotation?
Sure. You know, if your first rotation, you have the opportunity to get peds, you need to get the peds, because you, probably the rest of your rotations are adult. And if you don't have 10 by the end of your first rotation, I don't know where you're gonna get the others. Peds rotations are tough, guys. There are a limited number of peds centers that do cardiac surgery. Many pediatric cardiac surgeons don't want students. And it's just really difficult. I think Brandon has, from Loma Linda, they do both adult and peds. Brandon has, I think, 30-some pediatric cases. He's gonna be a pediatric perfusionist. Yeah, Zach.
Do we get do we get a core evaluated on the observations too?
How else are we gonna track them? Yeah, observation or non-observation, guys, those evaluations go into core. Even if there's only 2 or 3 items that the preceptor is evaluating you on, they go into core. Some of the previous classes asked me, well, how many cases do I have? And so I pull them up in core and then, you know, you have 175 cases. No, I've got over 200. You didn't put them into core, or you weren't persistent in having your preceptors finalize the cases. And if they don't finalize them, they don't count. Okay, where were we? Let's get to ECMO. New requirements from the American Board for ECMO. And actually, these are the same requirements as CCPs do when they recertify, okay? ECMO case requires the following: patient assessment. This doesn't matter if it's adults or peds. Circuit preparation, whatever that means. It could be in part, in total, it's okay. ECMO initiation, stabilization, and management of that patient for 4 hours. Or in lieu of these things, you can do a patient assessment and do patient monitoring for 6 hours. So, you know, it's not perhaps as difficult as it may appear on the surface. What if you're putting an Impella in the patient in the OR? And you're not the primary perfusionist. You're familiar with Impella. Oh, patient was initiated. Right? I mean, it's that simple. I mean, that's not ECMO, I know, but it's circulatory assist. Okay, so, I mean, it's not necessarily that daunting.
ECMO or bad, this is ECMO or bad on the, doesn't that on the documentation?
But,
Doesn't say ECMO or bad 5?
yes. Any questions about ECMO? Ventricular assist. Patient assessment, preparation, observation, of preparation or observation. In other words, if you are observing the preceptor priming heart rate 3, boom, you've observed it. Initiation, stabilization, management, 4 hours. Yes, Jessica?
This might be an obvious question. Is it a 2-for-1 if they leave, like if they're in the OR and they need assist and they do the ECMO Impella combination? Is that a 2-for-1?
Yeah. I would say so.
That's how they bill. I would think if you're billing for separate services, then those are separate entities of cases.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The problem is gonna be the day that you put, the surgeon's gonna be the same.
Okay.
It's not gonna.
Okay.
I wouldn't suggest it.
I would
It's gonna be-
get an extra one, you know, just in case.
Because it'll say the same date, same hospital, same surgeon, same everything you got to document, so.
Okay.
Okay,
That is a good question.
so 5 ECMO or 5 VAD or some combination thereof. If you don't have those, you're not gonna graduate, you can't apply for your certification exam, okay? Pretty important. Okay, so you guys used to use the iPad for your evaluations for simulation. Let me ask you a preliminary question first. How many of you like Professor Evans? Okay, if you like me and are kind, want to be kind to me, the link method is the preferred method for providing your preceptor with an evaluation. Probably good for me to show you what that looks like. The basis, come here, cursor.
And it seems like the clinical instructors, this is the method they prefer. This is how most other programs perform evaluations.
Okay, let's say Anderson is the first name on the list. Let's be Wyatt Anderson. I'm going in, this is my student menu. I'm going to log in.
I think you have to drop your PowerPoint.
There we go. Okay. And I thought I already did that. So I'm going to log in and make sure when your name comes up that you go and log in, even though in theory so I will go to email, clinical case, or weekly summaries. You're gonna get both, right here. And you'll see under case evaluation, add. Okay, everyone with me so far? Select your site, or your preceptor. I don't really want simulation, but okay. Date, today is the 29th, all day. Surgeon's name. And the hospital is case we're doing today is what, Dr. Strong? What are we doing today?
Cabbage times 7.
First time three? Okay.
You probably never see cabbage times 7.
And let's say this is your third case. Wyatt. We got a male, we got an adult, we're doing hands-on, and this is on pump, and preceptor is I don't know if I'm a preceptor for your class. Anyway, we'll find out. So I'm gonna submit the log. And you can see all the information here. And what this does is your preceptor will get a link now in his or her email. They click on that link and they've got the evaluation.
And they can do it on their phone, they can do it on a computer.
Yeah, like Director Webb said, most of your preceptors want to do it on their smartphone. Fairly easy to read if you have good eyesight. It's very convenient because they have their phones with them. Most of them use them for communication within their department. Yeah, Zach?
So are all our preceptors like pre-entered in there, or is there a way we need to enter them?
If you find that a preceptor is not in there, you need to email me ASAP, and I will put them in. I think all the new sites, I just did Huntsville a couple days ago. I think that's all the new sites for now. Memphis is in, yeah, we're cool. But if, things change, obviously, people leave, new people come on board, just let me know, give me their email address. Personal email address is preferred than corporate email address if they're a hospital or even a contract group. We run into this problem with CCS in that, I don't know, their server is really touchy, and so sometimes the preceptor doesn't get the link, so we use their personal email address. In some hospitals, we run into that as well. I don't know what the deal is with their server, but.
Their firewall.
Hmm.
Their firewalls.
Exactly, that's what it is.
Okay, so they'll receive the link and they'll have the evaluation, they'll go through the evaluation with you, for you, and then hopefully we'll debrief you afterwards. We'll talk about debriefing later. And then the next day or 12 hours thereafter, 24 hours thereafter, they need to confirm that, after they've submitted it. Okay. You should be able to see the progress of that in core, of your evaluations and whether or not they've been finalized or not. Now, there may be a situation where your preceptor does not want to use the link method. Okay. Use the iPad. Okay. The problem with the iPad, quite frankly, is there's no security in it. it's not like we don't trust you, you know, but let's face it, you could put in, you know, do your own evaluations. The problem that could occur is our accreditation agency, the university accreditation agency, looks at these types of things, and there's the potential for abuse there, and you know, they could shut it down, not the university, but shut that evaluation system down. So it really needs to be kind of an escape for the preceptors that don't want to use the link method. And so I would make sure that you take your iPad into the hospital fully charged, just in case.
A, you always wanna have something to take notes with anyway, so you can do that on your iPad. B, it works really well, if there's an there's an emergency, right? And, you know, you wanna do a debriefing at the end of the case whenever possible. So everything's fresh in everybody's mind about what happened. Giving good feedback on things you need to improve. With this method, if they add something on or emergency or something, you can move forward, so.
On the core website, you will have a written evaluation. I can show it to you in a minute. A written evaluation printed out. I would carry half a dozen copies with me just in case nothing's working. You know, at least you have something for them. Same evaluation, it's just on a sheet of paper.
And remember, we looked at the study with the questionnaire. Hi, Cronbach offer for all the different options, and you know, some, quite frankly, your clinical instructors appreciate having multiple ways to give you feedback, so.
Okay, where were we now? Let's go back to the PowerPoint. You guys need to take a bladder care break? Just a quick one. Okay.
Remember, eventually you're gonna be on your own, as cases happen. You get a new team, or, you know, this is when, I go and take care of that, and, right,
Yeah. Mom's not gonna help me my son in this story.
So, I just wanna verify, so the renewal is happening, it's just a timing of when, okay.
Yeah, hopefully, you know, since it's fairly simple, and that sentence is deleted from the previous
Yeah, so it should be an
agreement,
easy little.
so their legal department should not have a problem with it. One
Okay.
thing.
this is when they will.
I know.
Boy, that way up on nurse.
I know. So say, cause we're 2 weeks out, so say it gets to about the week before, what would you like me to do?
Huh?
Or should we just wait until, like, if it gets to that point?
You could go and start observing.
I could just observe at
Go
some
in,
time.
go
Okay.
into the hospital, observe.
Oh, at Johnson, oh, I could do that?
Yeah.
Like a orient
I'll have to
until.
check with them and
Okay.
see, but,
I'm sure that's Friday.
Yeah.
yeah, it's especially Carroll County.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, or you could observe at Centennial. I do have a Plan C for you in Birmingham, Alabama.
Okay.
If
Everything
goes
just crashes. That's okay. I like having plans. So that's what I was like, I just wanna know the plan,
This
that's all.
is the flexibility.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just wanna
right.
know the plan. Just tell me, okay, that's good to know. Okay, cool. Glad I'm not a lawyer.
Seems like they should go orient and all that.
I would think so. I'll check with Lisa. I mean, because we're at a point where it should be a no-brainer. But
Should,
stranger things have happened.
should be a no-brainer. Okay, it's nice today, you going out?
Thank you. No, just follow fixing it.
And it.
Did you brush your hair today, Matt?
No, you need a haircut?
I wasn't gonna say anything.
Oh, no, dude, for like 3 weeks now.
It was freshy fresh before you go.
I'll go on Saturday. Good boy.
Looking up the oxygenator they use, Josh was in it.
What was that?
Looking up the oxygenator they use. Right now.
What do they use for the adults?
For the adults, they use Medtronic. For the peds, they use Torrent.
So, that 05 is pretty much a standard for peds, all of them, it's not just the adult. Gee, Josh, that sounds like.
I don't know, I don't know.
I tell you that my wife wants to move to Huntsville.
Oh, yeah?
I told her how cool
And they
Huntsville
use
is.
an
It's like,
S5.
wow, it's a little gym in the middle of,
Yeah,
they got-
you know,
they got great
not the middle, but
parks.
upper
Yeah,
part of
they're-
Alabama.
They said they're not using them all kids.
I was impressed.
They got, well, eventually they're not gonna choose.
Yeah, well, they said,
Intelligent
he
stuff.
said, we tried using them,
We're getting
and then he
more
said
of
something
them.
happened, so
The
they
world
pulled
out there
them.
now, and it's.
So they're gonna roll them back out on adults this week.
Yeah, FBI is supposed to be
But
coming,
they
bringing
said
30,000 jobs.
They will not use
It's
the
gonna
essence on peds and
boom the area.
I'm
There's a,
real interested to see how
I
much
stayed
they
at,
get,
I have to.
because I know he's taking students from.
you know, in that kind of downtown area.
Exactly.
And
You're not busy
that
every day.
Yeah, it
huge,
is.
massive
Is that nervous? I'm
apartments,
excited to
store
meet other
complex, it's amazing.
But if I don't get enough
What you
cases,
put-
you don't.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And we
You'll
want
be
to-
here.
Of course, it's just
Let's go
free.
let me.
Apparently, it's
Well,
gonna
it's
be
a ski trip,
apartments
too.
and stores.
They're doing all this stuff around there. And what's weird about it is Huntsville is
A little
it's a big
information
city
for some
without
fun.
any skyscrapers.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. It's all high tech.
But I think you're gonna see the other sides of just the.
Metropolitan
Program.
just everybody else is surrounding areas.
I'm excited to meet
It's
them.
not the metropolitan
Nervous, but
area.
Amber said they're gonna be your best friends.
Something.
That's cool.
No, she just saying make friends
Our big city.
with the students at every site, yeah.
I know, I should.
She was like, they're not your
It's a
competition
big
at that
company.
point.
That's right, it's all networks.
She was like, and if they look at it as competition, that's on them. But it's not at this point.
That's the super.
Yeah.
Is it,
It does,
They're being paid.
and I was gonna let them.
that won't be in the academic program, so
Well, she needs
I
some help.
wouldn't think.
We need to vote for it.
And Olympia was saying she's still not ready for all the.
Oh, no.
I'm excited to see them.
You guys still attentive? Somewhat? It's a lot of stuff, and I know you're thinking about, well, you know, my clinical site, how am I gonna get these things to where I need to be, and where do I need to be in the hospital, and blah, blah, blah. It's a lot of stuff. I can appreciate that. So we'll probably have, probably not even 30 more minutes, and then we'll have lunch, and we can have some fun this afternoon. Fun?
Party.
Party.
Exactly. I always tell them, when that comes to town, we party. But I think we should bring up, if somebody, if you are out clinically and you're not meeting the standard, so you're gonna get contacted and you're gonna be meeting with Professor Evans. So you can count on that.
Yeah, it's not a spank your bottom
Just to
meeting.
say, hey.
It's how can we get you up to the standards?
Yeah, so we're gonna, together, all three of us together, we're gonna sort out a plan, because this is my class, to get everyone through, right? So we want you to succeed, and so if we want to meet the standards, we're gonna be Zooming, and talking about a plan to get you ahead.
So I can go to Puerto Rico.
This isn't hardcore.
Oh, no, it's okay.
Does it say it up there?
It says U.S. territories.
True.
I actually saw a job.
If somebody wanted
Puerto
to,
Rico.
I know people out there, we can create clinical sites, they would love to take our students. I know that for a fact, because in context with
So we can rotate up there with Gil like count.
I'd rather hit them now.
Canada, yeah, oh yeah. So Canadians would take our board exam.
Hey, Patrick, could you get the rest of the group in?
Yeah.
As long as they're not in the restrooms. Don't
Don't
want to interrupt that.
Knocking down the stall door.
Yeah. Hurry up, the patient needs to go on back there.
Go get them out there.
Make it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, so we talked about the American Board form, and this is it. I think some of you have already downloaded it. I circle this because in order for you to get Director Webb's signature, there are some things that you have to do, okay? And you'll learn more about this next year at this time. But you have to provide us with your employer, name, address, contact information, and you have to provide us with your,
A non-Lipscomb email address.
yeah, and I'll explain why we need this, okay? And obviously, where your residence is and contact information. One of the things that we have to do for the ACPE is surveys. ACPE surveys your employer to find out what kind of a student you were, what areas that you may or may not have, what areas you may have lacked, what areas you are very competent in, okay? And also, then you will receive a survey in terms of the same survey questions. You know, how you felt about the program, what areas were strong, what areas need improvement, that type of thing. Before you get that signature for your American Board, you need to provide Nicole with that information. Okay? It's difficult, and I can tell you historically, it's very difficult to get that information. So we're gonna hold this above your head, so that because if you don't turn this in with the director's signature, you don't sit for the exam.
And the ACPE will send out the surveys. You guys know I may send you out something.
Yeah, so we don't know who it came from in terms of your personal survey or what hospital it came from. We don't know that. All we get is the results, and I have to put those results in our annual report to the ACPE. There are certain thresholds that we have to meet for various cognitive, hands-on ability, that type of thing.
It's the same thing with your board exams. We get those, but there's no names on them, so.
There should be. I mean, really, there should be. I mean, that's
There's not.
how we could improve,
Doesn't
how we could improve as a program if we were able to look at, you know, a specific student and see where they may have fallen short on the exam. We know, give us a better idea of how we might need to revise the curriculum. But we've tried this for 20 years that I'm aware of, and the American Board won't do it. Okay. Let's talk about clinical sites and your preceptors. One of the things I think that's grossly underestimated and not appreciated is what these preceptors do. We don't pay them. Hospital doesn't pay them for being preceptors. And, you know, quite frankly, you know, Director Webb was a preceptor, I was a preceptor, and it's extra work, guys. And if you're gonna do it right, it's extra work. And it's a lot of responsibility. You know, if you screw up, I'm responsible. I'm not picking on you. If you guys screw up, it's on us, it's on the preceptor. So I would ask you to, you know, keep that in mind, even though you have Mr. Marine Sergeant Preceptor, keep it in mind that he's there because he wants to ensure that his profession is up to a high standard. He wants to make sure that you, when you get done with that rotation, or certainly when you get done with all your rotations, that you are going to be a competent practicing perfusionist. I think if you guys keep this in mind, it'll help in a more positive structure if you get into situations. You know, we're going to talk about this tomorrow, but you're going to get in a situation where preceptors are dicks, you know, pardon the expression, but they can be. And you know, but again, you know, you can learn from them. You don't have to like them. You can learn from them.
Just appreciate them a little bit, and that's all it's gonna take.
We don't have any leverage with the clinical site. Zero.
As y'all are aware.
Zero. Because we're not paying them. You know, they're doing it for the betterment of their profession, the goodness of their hearts. Same thing with hospitals. They don't need perfusion students. Yeah, you know, they can market, we are an educational facility, right? That's the banner. But they don't need perfusion students. You know, we gotta kiss them to get agreements and to get onboarding material, which brings up another subject. Every site will have you doing different things for onboarding, every site. Some of you will be using My Clinical Exchange, which is an on-site thing that they contract with hospitals to take care of the onboarding process. Lurie is one. Lurie actually is the first one. Centennial is going to that in the fall, so be aware. Not the summer rotation, but the fall rotation. You can thank me right now. I have arranged that the program will pay for your, my clinical exchange application. You're welcome.
Thank you. Some of these things, some of the pediatric hospitals, you're gonna have to get fingerprinted. And some of it's all over the board. It's all over the board in terms of the requirements to be in that facility, so keep that in mind. Whatever it takes, you're gonna have to do it with saliva, DNA sample, who knows? I mean, it's just all over the board. There's no set standard.
And as I said, they all vary, they all have different materials, most of them have a website, their website that you go on to do some training, HIPAA training, fire training, whatever the hospital wants you to do. And you gotta complete it, and you gotta do it in a timely fashion, okay? I will typically give you the onboarding material and or instructions a month before time. Loma Linda requires it at least 2 months before time. Fortunately, we only have to do it once, Lily. Who else is it that was such a, Baptist Hospital in Jacksonville, they require 2 months. And I was a week short of 2 months and they denied our rotation. Not perfusionists, but the hospital. We have no leverage. Even getting on my knees with them, I have no leverage. Except raw knees.
And, some of the places, they have, private perfusion contract groups, so they're not gonna go and start stirring things up, they're not. Sometimes they will if they're hospital employed, they'll go down and they'll push things through, but if they're a contract group.
Yeah, it depends on their relationship with the hospital. If they've been there for a long time and know everybody, it's pretty easy. Kind of like Otto. Otto's a contract perfusionist, but he's been there for forever, and he's well respected and well entwined in that hospital. But do remember that timing is everything, and I understand that you're in the hospital, maybe you're in there 12 hours a night, and you need to spend 6 hours doing onboarding stuff. I'm sorry, but we gotta get it done or you don't get into the rotation, okay? And you know what happens if we can't start on time? We don't wanna extend the rotation, we don't wanna delay you receiving your diploma. That's ugly. Okay, then unfortunately, these hospitals just get more and more regulatory and require more stuff for you. Okay, the other thing is tomorrow, we will ask you to sign a form, it's a legal form. I guess we'll have you look at it tomorrow. We're not attorneys. If you have questions about it, you need to speak with the general counsel, Dr. Wilson. But frankly, guys, if you don't sign it, you can't go out for clinical rotations. Nicole's gonna have that form tomorrow and we'll look at it,
And it
okay?
will go in your permanent record.
Okay. Yes. I think that's all I have. Is lunch here?
It is, yes.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
We'll look, this is just a link, just recently I saw it in a journal, about communications. It's animated, it's kind of funky, but, it brings up some statistics that are pretty, important in understanding why communications are so vital.
Is that Bill?
No, no.
That's a good one.
But, yeah,
That's a good one.
I don't think I have that one anymore. Okay, guys, we'll have lunch, and then after lunch, we have the psychologist here, if I remember correctly. Yep, and then we have Ms.